Audi are looking at this Ulster rally to test this new car. Have you any worries whatsoever about it?
Okay, I had only 2 days of practice, and that was very slow. And I'm just a little bit worried that I haven't found all bumps when I was going slowly. And this car is so fast, especially in 4th, 5th, that I'm afraid to find somewhere a bump where I take off.
But Stig won this event last year. That must be a great consolation to you and give you great confidence for the weekend.
That's right. I'm sure for me my engine is much more powerful than last year. It should be no problem for me to win this race with this engine. But of course you have so much small details which have to work. But anyway, I'm looking forward and I'm quite optimistic.
Jimmy, you're second at the championship points at the moment. What are your plans to be the leader when we come back here tomorrow evening?
Well, to be the leader in the championship, we've got to be back here as first car, so we've obviously got to try that.
How great do you think the challenge of the Audi is going to be?
I think the car will be very quick, but whether it will last in the Irish roads or no, I do not know. But there's plenty other activity coming from the other Opels of Fisher and Brooks and Billy Coleman and people like that.
So you'll be way more worried at this stage as regards the Opels behind you than the Audi in front of you?
Not really, no. I think the Audi will be very quick, but the only problem the Audi will be that if he becomes first, then it means that even if I was second or Russell was second, we wouldn't lead the championship. It would still leave Hannah Mikkel in lead of the championship. So obviously we've got to try and we hope that we can beat him as well.
Looking forward to watching you, Jimmy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Per, you're the leading Group A contender. What are going to be your tactics for the next 24 hours or so?
I try to go to finish. This is the most important and fast as possible.
And what are the chances of a Group A car finishing well within the top 10?
I think it's very hard to be in top 10 with the Group A car here. For asphalt you need a lot of horsepower and we have not so many.
10-7, Friday night, 27th of July. Number 1 seed Walter Rohrl in the short Audi Sport Quattro. At number 2 is Jimmy McRae and Mike Nicholson in the AC Delco Manta, heading down the first stage of the Rentatruck Ulster Rally. The first of the Group A cars is Per Eklund in the Toyota Corolla. Ahead of the drivers lay 250 miles of stages in 22 hours. Fourth in the road is Russell Brooks in the second of the Mantas, the Andrews Heat for Hire model. At 5 is the second of the Audis, Malcolm Wilson's privately owned example. And at number 6 is the popular young German driver, Harald de Muth. The first Northern Ireland driver is Bertie Fisher at 7. With Rothman's Circuit of Ireland winner Billy Coleman at 9 in yet another Opel Manta. The Ulster looked as if it could be a battle between the Audis and the Opel Mantas. The target, not just an Ulster result, but more importantly perhaps, points in the British Championship for the car makers as well as the drivers. Not only overall, but in Per Eklund's Group A category as well. Bertie Fisher was second at the end of the first stage, with Rohrl first, but many other drivers were in early trouble. Malcolm Wilson, pictured here, was only to do a couple of stages before his front axle failed, a repeat of his Donegal mishap. Bertie Fisher overshot a couple of junctions. Billy Coleman had brake troubles from the word go, while Austin McHale was about to collide with a very large tree, and he and co-driver Christy Farrell were lucky to escape injury, but were definitely out of the rally. Ian Tilk at 11 was as dramatic as ever, while Mark Lovell was driving the four-wheel drive Citroën at 12. Cyril Bolton was in the Pressport Chevette at 14, again co-driven by Derek Irvine. Car 13, Ernest Kidney, was a non-starter, his Lotus Sunbeam head blown. Welshman Bob Fowden was at 15 in the Big Rover, supported by Howard Abrams' garage. Already in the wars was Group A frontrunner Tim Bryce, his Sunbeam radiator damaged after a shunt. Bryce was out. Receiving Silkeline support in a one-off missing run was Kenny McKinstry and Robbie Philpott. Continued to dominate at the front, seconds a mile quicker than now second-placed Jimmy McRae. All the Manta drivers were worried about their brakes, so hot was the pace. Per Eklund led Group A from Alan Johnson. Russell Brooks, he was third overall at this point. Bertie Fisher, he was now back to fourth, but only seconds separated the leading Opels. Already out were the Audis of Malcolm Wilson and Harold Demuth, the German's car stopping with burnt wiring after a turbo pipe came off. We also catch our last Ulster glimpse here of Austin McHale before his accident.
The 1983 Northern Ireland Loose Sprint Champion. You're driving the auto-tune prepared Datsun 240 RS. What can you tell us about the event so far?
Well, really what we have set out to do was go as hard as we could and try and be as safe as we could. We've had a few problems with brakes, other than that the car has performed very well. I think at the minute we're lying probably 6th overall, and you know, we've had no problems other than one straight on into a field, and thankfully some farmer left the gate open. Right. So it was a handbrake job and back out again, you know.
Harold Hazard, Managing Director of Rentatruck. How did the sponsorship of the 1984 Ulster Rally come about?
Well, it goes back to the early spring, and I was approached by Robert Harkness and asked me would I be interested in sponsoring the rally. So one thing led to another, and here we are tonight, the first night of the rally, and we're the main sponsors.
The problems at the moment, Billy, just what's wrong?
Well, the latest problem is that the alternator went, and we just barely made it into service here on park lights by following another car, so we're lasted an awful lot of time at this point. Before that we had serious brake problems. We still have the brake problem, but we think we can sort that here now.
And have you dropped much time over the last few stages?
5, 6, 7 minutes, a lot of time.
And that drops you down 6th, 7th?
I think it must have, yeah. Completely out of contention at this point, I would say. It's very disappointing.
There's long ways to go, Billy, and I'm sure we'll be back before the end of the rally. Thank you.
Hopefully.
Look, you're currently last 6th position, but I gather you have very serious problems with your engine at the moment.
Yeah, we think so, because we came round a hairpin, started pulling away from the hairpin, suddenly noticed the oil line was still on, so we had about 20 pounds for most of the next 100 yards straight. It went off song, but then came back on, so whether or not the Silk Lane oil has done its job, we hope it has.
As dawn rises in stage 13, Rohrl had extended his lead through the night to 3 minutes. Jimmy McRae had battled with teammate Russell Brooks the whole way through. Only 9 seconds separated them as they headed for breakfast at Omagh. Coleman, he was back in 6th place following his troubles. Cyril Bolton's Pressport Chevette had a trouble-free run so far and was in 5th position. Ken McKinstry had slipped to 8th place, but the biggest drama belonged to Bertie Fisher, who had been on his roof but still held 4th. Bob Fowden's Big Rover was just outside the top 10, having had clutch problems. Per Eklund is in big trouble here with a damaged camshaft, lying 2nd in Group A now. Damien Campbell was 3rd in Group A with his Talbot Samba, but surprise Group A leader was going into Omagh with Scottish driver Andrew Wood.
Fisher in 4th position, but you've had your problems, haven't you?
Well, we have been really 4th from the start of the rally. We were 2nd on the first stage, but from there on, Jimmy and Russell went in front of us, and obviously the Quattro. So we've been holding 4th position about, well, in the same minute as Jimmy, and on the 12th stage, on a very, very slippery right-hand bend. Actually, it was a very fast piece of road down to a 90 right, and there was a very good gripping surface. Just when we turned into the corner, it was shiny, wet tar, and we're on slick tyres. Car just aquaplaned across the road and took down about half a dozen concrete posts and rolled into the field. And took us some 5 minutes to get the car out again. So we're still 4th, but obviously we're quite a bit behind Jimmy and Russell and the Quattro.
It was still sort of early and cold on the Saturday as Rohrl headed north in the second half of the rally. Rohrl's lead was now academic. The big battle was for 2nd place. That was between Brooks and McRae. Both tarmac experts, Brooks led McRae by 9 seconds at this point. Russell had a brand new Manta for the Ulster rally, a very lightweight car, whereas McRae was driving a much older general purpose model which had seen service through many British forests. For Bertie Fisher, it was a matter now of holding station in 4th place, going for a finish and British Championship points. Cyril Bolton was hanging grimly on to 5th place. His Chevette was now showing signs of overheating, the English driver about to change the radiator at the Draperstown service. Billy Coleman was just stroking the Manta in 6th place. His electrical problems were behind him, but he was 3 minutes behind Fisher and 2 behind Bolton. For Ken McKinstry, his immediate aim was to get ahead of his Silkaleen teammate Ian Tilk. Only seconds separated the two drivers. Tilk was throwing the Escort about in dramatic style, but about to be slowed by engine problems, but still he kept McKinstry at bay. Ahead of the drivers lay the tough stages through the Spurn Mountains and into County Londonderry. The next major service after Draperstown was at Ahadui, and then it was on to the fast County Antrim stages over Star Bog, down Glendun and up Glenariff. As the battle raged on behind Rohrl, news came down the line from the Omagh service area that Per Eklund's team couldn't change the camshaft successfully, and Per was out of the Ulster. Another top Group A driver, Alan Johnson, had crashed earlier in the evening to leave the category tussle between the Toyota of David Mann and the Sambas of Andrew Wood and Damien Campbell. As the leaders moved further north, Rohrl's lead climbed to 4 minutes. The battle between second and third places was now a real cliffhanger. Brooks had lost some time with a small electrical problem, but still kept within 2 or 3 seconds of his teammate. McRae was also slowed momentarily with a soft front suspension strut. Bertie Fisher was struggling with his now ill-handling Manta, but keeping the fat fact very quiet from his rivals behind. Coleman was still content to maintain stick, but still driving economically and quickly. Ian Tilt was simply driving as hard as he could to maintain 7th place, his engine now sorted out. Not even a puncture slowed Walter Rohrl's progress. Indeed, he only lost about 20 seconds, virtually the only problem to the 500 horsepower Audi all weekend. Russell Brooks was trying everything he knew to move ahead of his teammate. Fluorescent tape streaming from the roof aerial, testimony to Brooks' excursion up a farm lane, and proof of how hard he was trying. McRae too had his moments, a high-speed spin not helping his cause. At this point, he's 3 seconds ahead of his teammate, but as the overcast weather produces a few spits of rain, he's about to fall back to third. Fisher had by now made his 4th place secure, over 4 minutes ahead of 5th place Bolton, who was coming under increasing pressure from Billy Coleman. For English driver Bolton, it was cross the fingers time. his Chevette engine, not the healthiest, still overheating. Ken McKilstry was still trying everything he knew, the Banbridge driver, praying in vain the roads would stay dry. As Ian Tilk blasts on in 7th place, news came through of another major retirement. Bob Fowden's Rover was out with a broken back axle. As the rally moved across the County Antrim Plateau, rain did come in fits and starts. The drivers were all getting tired by now after 18 hours of virtually non-stop high-speed driving. It was a welcome relief then to have a few minutes break at the Glenara Forest Park and have a quick look at a much more sedate form of motoring, indeed a blast from the past.
Mike, I'm thinking there's lots of people around here that this Fraser Nash will bring back very fond memories for.
Well, I suppose so. Although I used to be involved a bit in rallying a few years ago, and I see very few of the older faces around, so maybe the people now in rallying are a bit too young to remember this sort of thing.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the history of this particular car?
Well, Fraser Nashes are probably better known for their racing activities, but this particular car was built for trials and rallying by a champion in England. Unfortunately, he died shortly afterwards. It passed back through the factory to a ladies' team who in fact competed with it in the 1933 Alpine Rally. So it's quite an interesting car, and Lord Dunleith owned it, and then I bought it from him, and he, I think, did Dunboyne and various races in the south with it. Then took it to bits, has another Fraser Nash, and I bought all the bits from him and built it up. But I've had a lot of fun with it. I do trials, rallies, anything that comes about, you know, but most of the fun is really getting it out on the road and enjoying it, even if it's following round on a wet day, the modern rally scene.
Very nice talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Walter, with just 5 stages to go and nearly 4 minutes of a lead, you must be pretty confident at this stage.
Yes, that's right. I'm really confident with our program of testing. We had no problems up to now, and that is really good.
And you found Irish Tarmac rallying very much to your liking?
Yeah, it's difficult, but really it's fantastic race, which is really good driving.
And no problems whatsoever since the word go with this car?
Yeah, okay, now it seems we have no more any problems with the engine, but we have to work on suspension. That's the next thing which we have to do.
Nice talking to you, Walter. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've just 5 stages left, and the second separates yourself and Russell Brooks. What way do you think it's going to develop?
Well, it's been, apart from our spin and Russell's slight off, we've never been more than a few seconds apart throughout the whole rally, so we were just a bit too cautious over the mountain there in the wet with the slicks, so it took 5 seconds off us, so we're now 1 second behind them. But we keep on battling.
And any major problems to be seen after at this service?
I don't. The weather is the major problem, really. We just don't know what tyres to fit, really. And it's if you choose the wrong tyres, then you can lose half a minute, you know.
Thanks for talking to us, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you.
With just a second between yourself and Jimmy, it's all to play for, isn't it?
Yes, 5 stages to go. It's about 30-15 at the moment.
And any of the two of you have no notion of slackening off, I think.
No, we're just waiting for the team manager to say, come on lads, pack it in, this is a bit ridiculous. When I'm leading, of course.
And what about tyre choice? It has been very, very difficult with the last few stages.
Yes, I haven't a clue what to put on, because it's my first tarmac event with the car as well, so I really don't have an extensive knowledge of what you should and shouldn't use, so we've stuck to the same thing all the way through.
And you haven't been on slicks like some of the boys have been cut after the last service?
We've been on slicks all the time.
Nice talking to you, Russell.
Right.
After the Glenara Forest Park service area, the drivers looped back over Glendon and round the Son of Tor stage. The weather was by now going rapidly downhill. Over the high ground, the drivers were having to cope with mist and low cloud as well as wet roads. The problem for the drivers was still what tyres to choose. As McRae had already said, choose wrong and half a minute goes. Most of the top cars were still on dry weather rubber. There's an old saying about fortune favouring the brave. McRae is certainly brave. Here is his big slice of good fortune. Just hold on to your armchairs a minute. It's remarkable how Scotsman McRae kept his cool after that bang. In fact, he was just as quick as anyone through there. But is it surprising that co-driver Mike Nicholson seemed to age about 2 years over the Ulster's 22 hours? The 22 hours of the Rentatruck Ulster Rally are very nearly over. The top 10 is almost finalised. Only last-minute change was to Mark Lovell. Mark had battled the entire rally in the diminutive four-wheel drive Citroën Mille Piste. Against all sorts of mechanical problems, the talented young Lovell had established himself in 10th place, only for the engine to stop a couple of stages from the end. Lovell did get going again, but all chance of a top 10 placing was gone. So, on the final run into the Belfast finish, David Mann and co-driver Dave West were in 10th place with their 1600cc Toyota Corolla, and winners of Group A, a great result for the English driver. Donegal's Pat Dunyan and his Glengormley co-driver Neil Fitzsimmons were 9th overall in Pat's Talbot Sunbeam. In 8th place was Ken McKinstry and Robert Philpott in the Nissan 240 RS, hired from Autotune specially for the Ulster. Ian Tilk and his co-driver Ian Ray had stayed ahead of their Silkaleen teammate to take a well-deserved 7th place. Cyril Bolton and his Belfast co-driver Derek Irvine did make the finish, but slipped 1 place to 6th spot on the very last stage. Old Master Coleman turned up the wick on that very last stage to take 5th place. A remarkable result considering his nighttime problems. 4th place was also pretty remarkable for Ballinamallard's Bertie Fisher, considering his Shell Gold Card Manta was on its roof in an Enniskillen field for 5 minutes during the night. For Jimmy McRae and co-driver Mike Nicholson, even the very last stage had its frustrations and dramas. McRae gave it everything he had, but an overshoot at a junction cost him more valuable seconds and the fight was over. Jimmy had to settle for third and only 10 Rothmans British Championship points. Jimmy thought then that perhaps his chances of regaining his British crown were gone. Subsequent events on the Isle of Man turned the tables, of course. The Scot did become the new champ with his AC Delco Manta. For Brooks and his long-term co-driver Mike Broad, second place was nearly as good as an outright win. Their new Andrews Heat for Hire Manta had behaved impeccably throughout the event. Just that small electrical problem, the only hiccup on what was a truly courageous drive over the Rentatruck Ulster stages, particularly through the rain at the end. The three-time Circuit of Ireland winner had yet again proved how gritty and successful a tarmac driver he is. Ex-World Rally champion Walter Rohrl and his co-driver Christian Geisthofer had led from start to finish on their very first Irish visit and had given the new short wheelbase 500 horsepower Audi its debut international victory. This is Brian Patterson signing off and hoping that you enjoyed this Cork Video Services production.